might have to press it. So hopefully that's sorted for everyone. Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming and welcome to this webinar. This webinar is Big Adventures on Average Talent, Ultramarathons, River Rescues, and You. And for those that don't know me, I'm Christina. I'm a personal and professional. I help people make a positive impact in the world without burning out or sacrificing their well-being. And my work brings in psychology and mindset around confidence and well-being, and also building physical intelligence, which is about integrating what's happening with the body in the way that you think and feel, and how that also affects the way that you perceive and interpret and respond to the world, and then harnessing that for your success and well-being. And it's all about that sort of deep and meaningful and long-term change. And this is Mark.
Hello, I am Mark, and first of all, and probably the most important thing that I must point out is that I am Christina's husband. I knew I needed to not forget to say that part. And as well as being a teacher and a father, I have a track history of taking on some really big running challenges, sometimes for charity and sometimes purely for myself. And this kind of habit has really kicked off over the last 4 years. And I've learned a lot and become a much better runner over those 4 years and grown as a person as well, which is partly why we're here now. And that journey has also led to me recently becoming a running coach, which is another exciting part. I'm not going to delve into the running history too much because we'll pick up on bits of that over the course. But basically, through taking on some really big adventures, I have had some great experiences, met some wonderful people, and done some cool things. We'll talk about a few of them before, but that has included becoming the first person to finish a fun run at the UK Berkeley Marathons. I see Francois is in the crowd, and I got to run quite a lot of that with him as well, which is awesome. As well as being somehow invited to run for England in the Backyard Ultra Championships for the Four Nations, which is quite frankly a absolutely chaotic and crazy race. Which we don't delve into today, unfortunately, but there's lots of things that I've done that have led us to this big adventures point today.
So how we've ended up coming to this point of doing this webinar and with this adventure that Mark's about to take on is because last year we moved to Chepstow and I went along to a talk by the Friends of the River Wye about the state of the River Wye, which is categorised as unfavourable-declining, even though it's also categorised as a special area of conservation. So it should have one of the highest levels of protection in the UK, but obviously it's in trouble. And it's a really fascinating and complex story, and it involves forests in South America, the latest technology, the oldest traditions and cultures of farming, climate change, ecology, science, sports, community, adventure, human mental and physical health, life and death, and the most basic of our human needs, water and food. So I was really inspired. I was really interested. Then a few months later in February, I think, Mark and I were celebrating our 18 years since we met, and we went along to attend a big event in Monmouth where there was 500 people in the audience, and there was a whole load of representatives that were talking about their perspectives, about the challenges, the solutions that's facing the river. So we talked all evening, Mark and I, the children were at my mum's again, and the next day we were hiking along the Wye Valley Walk, and this idea was coming together. So Mark, do you want to tell what the idea is?
Yeah, so the details
More
of
than
the
an idea
plan.
now, which is a plan, isn't it now? So
Yeah, it was an idea that now it's going to happen. But when we were at the talk, there were all these people scientists doing these great stuff, and I just kind of felt like I couldn't do much about that. But what I do is I run. So while we were walking on the Wye Valley Walk, we came up with the idea of running the length of the River Wye to raise the funds and awareness for the River Wye. I think when we came up with the idea, I didn't actually know how long the walk was. So yeah, then we're Googling that and I realized quite how big it is. It's 219 kilometers long. And the Wye Valley Walk goes from the source up in Pymlinton down to near the estuary in Chepstow. And so the plan is to run the whole of that and to try and break the current record. So there is a current fastest known time record. The women's record is held by one of my club mates, Jane Roscoe, and the men's record is 46 hours, 5 minutes, 59 seconds, held by a chap called Benjamin Davies. So when I saw that, that becomes an extra bonus to try and break the record. And the point of doing it was to help the River Wye campaign. So I'm running to raise funds and awareness for the Friends of the River Wye. In particular, I wanted to work to support the Citizen Scientist campaign. So citizen scientists, regular people who go out, take measurements of the river to get some data so that we can have a really informed idea of what's happening with the river, where there are issues, if there's a sudden spike, and feedback to the Environment Agency. And as a physicist, teacher, coach, I love the data in this so that you can have that kind of objective viewpoint on what's going on. So we went out for a morning, myself, Christina, and the kids, with 3 of the data scientists, and we took some readings, different points, and saw how they worked. So all the funds raised from everything that we do, the event on the 12th, 13th of October, webinars and the fundraiser, is all aimed to give training and resources and recruitment to citizen scientists so that there is more data and a more informed discussion.
And just in case you haven't had a chance to donate to the fundraiser and you are able to, I've just put the link to the fundraiser in the chat. So for me also, as a coach, I have this real interest in how it is that some people like Mark and who, as a runner, and other people that are adventurers, and people that are change makers, like the people that are working for the River Wye, how do they have the confidence or be able to take that first step to take on these big challenges, and how also do they have the resilience and endurance for the long runs to ride those inevitable ups and downs, and what can we learn so that other people can also take on their own challenges and have that huge transformative power for people and planet, and perhaps most of all, for ourselves as well, that we can transform and have transformation through these experiences. And also thinking about our ability to ride the ups and downs of everyday life too. So we'll do that today in this conversation. Mark's going to be sharing with us some of his experiences from his previous adventures, and we'll be also finding out what some of his valuable learning is. So, what is the valuable learning when you get lost overnight in a Thai jungle and your head torch is dead during an ultramarathon race? What can you learn from that experience? And I'll also be bringing in some of the insights that I've been picking up, because I've been having a lot of conversations. I'm having ongoing conversations with change makers and adventurers, and finding out their perspective. And I'm also going to bring in some relevant points from research, especially psychology and physiology. And then what we'll do is then we'll hand it over to you guys in the room for questions, and also feel free to put questions in the chat along the way, but we might not come to them until the end. And then we'd love to hear, what from what you've heard has resonated with you. What would you want to take away with you, and what are you bringing? You're all experienced people who've also taken on challenging things in your own ways, and what has worked for you, what has helped you. So we'd love to hear from you at the end. So the first thing that kind of feels a bit like an elephant in the room is Mark talks about big adventures on average talent, but he's doing this thing. It's 219 kilometers. He's going to try and break the fastest known time of doing it. Is it really average? And if he's saying it's average, is that fair to others of us who wouldn't even come close to doing that? So Mark, what's your answer to that challenge?
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. I coined the name Big Adventures on Average Talent for Instagram like 5 years ago. But I have, I think even last night at the club, I was getting a bit of grief about that as well. So I've had a few comments on Instagram as well, but I absolutely stand by that. I do think I'm average. My day job is a teacher, and there is just no way in a million years that I'm ever going to be a paid athlete. That is not my my calling in life. I'm not a pro, I'm not a sub-elite, and I think that kind of fits me within, average. But there's obviously going to be a huge range within average. The idea of big adventures and average talent is really like taking on something big without being the world's best. Like, you could just be a normal person and take it on. I do think that what is a big challenge for different people will be different, and I think that's absolutely fine. When I did coin it, I was a lot slower than I am now, and I've got a lot faster in the last 4 years. And I think that's partly because I keep taking on really big challenges, which has made me a better runner over the course of time. And basically, I've got faster and more experienced and stronger, better at running than I ever thought I could be. I never would have imagined when I started doing stuff like this. When I first coined that name, I've been trying and failing regularly to break 40 minutes for the 10K. I remember failing by 9 seconds for like the third or fourth time in a row running with you, James, a while ago. And since then, I've got a lot better, and now I can run that pace for an entire marathon, which is quite mind blowing when you stop and think about it. However, despite all that progress, I still think I fit in the realm of average. And a good example of that linked to this is the last big challenge I did, which was with JC here tonight, was the South Wales Traverse, which was an awesome route. It took me, it took us 22 hours and 16 minutes. Part of that was because Jono was waiting for me at the end. And I was reasonably pleased with that. It wasn't what I wanted. But the record set by Damien Hall is 14 hours. And the difference between 14 hours and 19, which is my optimistic time, or 22 is huge. So yeah, I'm definitely a long way from those elites. So I hope that there's some applications about taking on these challenges that everyone can kind of get something from. So I stand by the name.
All right, fine. So we can argue the finer points of whether it's average or not. But one of the things that I really like about big adventures on average talent, from my interest in psychology, is that it really reminds me a lot of growth mindset, which is based on research originally by Carol Dweck, and there's been a lot of more research since. And it centers around this belief that your basic qualities are things that you can cultivate. So you can do that through your efforts, through your strategies, your experience, and help from others. And this is different to the belief that your abilities are set in stone. And the reason why these beliefs matter is because it affects your behavior and it affects your approach to things. And this can influence your success and your well-being. So, for example, if you believe that your qualities are fixed, you might be more concerned with results and more fearful of trying something in case you do badly, because that result in your mind reflects who you are. And it says what it sets your value, it sets what your ability is. Whereas if you have more of a growth mindset, you might be more likely to try things and challenge yourself because you see them as they're opportunities to learn, they're opportunities to grow and develop yourself. And you're more concerned with the experience and less with the outcomes of that experience, because you don't see it as saying something about you and who you are and your value. You see it as just something about that moment or about what you were able to do in this time. And it's not about who you are. So that might mean you're more likely to take on the opportunities. You're also more likely to put yourself out there to seek support, which means letting people know what you're doing, and asking for that support and asking for that help to develop yourself and try different strategies. So you have more of a chance to grow those talents. And I'm also, when I'm speaking to people, I'm hearing about this, people who are taking on big challenges. They talk about enjoying being in the growth zone or the learning zone rather than in the comfort zone. And they like challenges. They like trying new things. They don't necessarily expect themselves to already have the answers. And they're happy to, interested to find them along the way. Like there's that curiosity. And another thing that it reminds me of is this idea about, so for example, when we think about how when children learn languages, we think about how when they're young, it's much easier for them, it's much harder for us adults. And part of this is because their brains are more flexible than ours. But even as adults, there's still neuroplasticity. Our brains can still change and adapt and rewire. You can teach an old human new tricks and new languages and new skills. But one of the things that can actually really get in our way compared to children is that children know and see it as normal, and they expect and accept that they're going to be doing things they don't already know how to do. And they start talking and they make mistakes. They start walking and they fall over. They're used to doing that. Whereas adults are more likely to find that really uncomfortable and to want to get it right before they start using it. But to really accelerate your learning and to develop and grow more, actually, you can do that if you've got the courage to use your knowledge and skills as you acquire them, as you go along. And this is what I think about when I hear Mark talking like this, because he's going out there and doing things sometimes that are beyond his current level of talent. And he doesn't know how far beyond his current level of talent is, and he's going to find out there on the trail. But it's through doing it that it increases his talent level. So we've done average. Then another phrase we've got is big, adventure. We're talking about challenge. These, of course, are all subjective and relative terms. You know, if you've been at home or in recovery for a long time, or you're going out with young children, going to the corner shop can be big, challenging, and an adventure. So just to give us some perspective, where are you at? How big is this adventure for you? And how much of a step up for you is it?
Yeah, no, it's always hard to put a number on how big it is, but there are some things we can put as a metric. So yeah, this is quite a big increase. Like they always say you should, just generally increase a little bit. But anyway, the distance increase, this is going to be 160% of the distance I've ever run before. So my longest distance so far is 135 kilometers, and we're going up to 219. So quite a big difference there. And in terms of my longest length, my longest run so far is just over 22 hours. Best case scenario, and things rarely go to best case in something like this, is going to be 32 hours. So that's nearly a 50% increase if everything goes according to plan. So whichever way you look at it, that it is an awful lot further than I've ever been before. So yeah, I'm quite terrified about that, but also really excited because I've never done it before. So I don't know how it's going to go. I cannot wait to run through the night. And I think that, whilst there's a load of things that are new here and are terrifying and exciting, I'm also kind of holding on to the fact that I have done quite a lot of things like this before, even though this is significantly further. I've run through the night before. I've done long runs that were longer than anything I've ever done before. I mean, I guess we all get longer every now and again, don't we? I've run through difficulty and when it's been difficult and kept going. A few people saw how bad a state I was in on the South Wales Traverse, and I kept going and I got that one done. So I think knowing that I can get into those difficult spots and keep going gives confidence that I can get into a difficult spot this time and keep going. So whilst it's a huge increase, in theory, I believe I can do it. Although theory doesn't get it done. So we will see.
Yeah, so the answer then is it's quite a big step up. There's quite a lot of unknown. And there's always going to be unknown what's going to happen out there on the trail, but there's also this unknown of you don't actually know where the limit of your ability is. You don't know if you're going to find it out there on the trail in October. But what is familiar is that space of unknowing and the unfamiliar itself, knowing that you've been there before and that you've come through that. And again, this is similar to things that I've heard, in particular, one of the conversations that I had, and it's, it can be a source of reassurance and confidence for future challenges and life in general with its unplanned for hurdles, when you've got that confidence in your ability to deal with uncertainty, and with not knowing, not having previous knowledge of whether or not you can deal with it, but you've been in that uncertain space before. And I think especially when you actually make that conscious link, which if you hadn't done it, we're doing it for you now. So you can apply that link of, yes, I've been here before. And then also what I'm noticing is that what you're doing is you are putting your attention on, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty. You're putting your attention on, okay, what is familiar? You're asking yourself, what gives me reason to believe that it is possible that I can do this? And then you're coming up with answers. And this is like a form of evidence-based optimism. And so for all of us, we have these moments where these questions come up, like, why do I think I could do this? Why would I think this would work? Like, what do I have to offer? But often when we ask those questions, we're not actually asking, we're really making a statement. I can't do this. I don't have anything to offer. This can't work. And this is very different to when you are actually asking that question, why do I think I could do it? And that's more likely to send the mind, instead of in this kind of downward spiral of despondency and thinking that you can't do it. Instead, it's actually going to start scanning for answers. And especially if this is something that is your normal approach, you're going to come up with some answers. And again, like this conversation that I had with one of the change makers, she's talking about, if someone maybe challenges her, like, is what you're doing making a difference? Or if she's having self-doubt, which happens, but she's actively asking those questions, and then she's coming up with examples, concrete examples. Well, I think it could work because it's worked before, or because I saw this example where it worked for them. And so she gets access to her knowledge and her experience, and that can all help her in that evidence-based optimism. So there's a lot that you can't control. One thing you can control, or at least influence, hopefully, is your training, your preparation. So tell us how that's going.
Well, yeah, I think if you had asked me, if this webinar had been last week and you'd asked me that question, I might have been in danger at this point of breaking down in tears and just leaving the chat, because, well, it wasn't going very well last week. I was just struggling. Everyone was tired, but specifically, I went out for a long run, which was meant to be 20 miles. And I went out in the evening at night time, test out the head torch, had some head torch issues, got blocked by some cows that just really wanted to get to know that head torch well, and had to reroute the longer route home. And I just ran out of physical and mental strength in all ways, shapes, and forms, and had the most painful 5 miles hike home I've had in a very, very long time. I was really convinced I'd make last orders in the pub, and I just didn't make it, and it felt awful. I have felt that way before. I do seem to remember Raz taking some photographs of me collapse on the floor, not wanting to go on in previous training blocks. Just remember that. Thanks, Raz. But I was exhausted, and I kind of, on reflecting that, I knew why. And I was exhausted not because of the running, but because of life, because stress is stress. And it wasn't just the training stress. I was trying to build that up. It was life stress as well. I was the end of the first week back at term. As a teacher, that is a tiring phrase, tiring phase. I was going out at night because it was our daughter's 6th birthday party that we've been hosting that day, and a bunch of other stuff going on. So I'm not surprised, and I can kind of acknowledge that's why it happened. But it still left me feeling pretty despondent. But then, since then, I had a really good long run last week. I got 22 miles in. I made it easy for myself because I went along the Bristol Bath cycle path, which is flat as a pancake. But even so, 22 miles is a nice accomplishment. It made me feel really good. And then on Sunday, we went out for a club championship race, and I had a really good race, felt great, and ended up winning, which there's nothing like winning as a chance to boost your confidence. So now I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about training. And I'm out tomorrow to go and recce a large section as well, which is quite exciting.
So I just saw, Karina, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm just trying to I'm just playing with reactions. Ignore me.
Okay.
I was trying to clap. Didn't happen.
Okay.
I raised hands, I put them down, I raised them again, I put them down. It was meant to be a clap.
Like, woo!
I tried to do a Mexican wave, didn't find the emoji.
Okay, Mexican wave, love it. Okay. Yeah, so basically, Mark, it sounds to me like, from what I remember over the years of your training bouts, kind of up and down, and that sort of seems to be how it often is. And of course, the events on the actual day, especially when it's the long ones, they tend to be a bit up and down as well. And this one, is probably not the worst of your training blocks either.
Yeah, it's definitely not the worst. Definitely not the worst. In fact, I'd say it's even slightly above average, despite that walk of shame that I had to do the other week. Okay.
So when you're experiencing the ups and downs of the training, is your strategy then, is it just stay the course, stick rigidly to the plan, or are you going to adapt the training as you go along?
Yeah, so I take my cue here from a running coach called Brad Hudson, who in his books he talks about writing the training plans for all of his athletes in pencil. Not, I mean, literally doing it in pencil, and the reason being he can rub it out, make changes, and he will say that he will adapt the training plan of his athletes in the warm-up as they're going towards it. And he's got some fantastic athletes that have been really successful with him. I really buy into that. However, I know that if I was to do that literally and write my training plans by pencil, it wouldn't work for me because I would just lose them because I'm not very good with paper. So my alternative is Excel. And I work really well with Excel. And Excel you can just change, which is delightful. And you can't lose as well, particularly with NAS Cloud. So I've been doing all of my training plans on Excel over the last 4 or 5 years. And now I use that when I'm writing a training plan for athletes as well. And it just lets me make a change and adapt it. So I am more than happy to make a change if needed, because I know that one bad session isn't going to ruin my performance in the same way that one really good session isn't going to make me have a great race. It's the consistency over time. And so I will, if I know I'm feeling tired, I will then make my training sessions easier to recover because it's about arriving fresh and injury free at the event. And then I also kind of hold loosely to how those performances go, because I think as runners, it's really easy to get caught up in how a training session's gone. And if it goes really well, we're like, yes, I'm really on it. But when it goes badly, we can really let that get to us. And I like the thought that you can't fluke a good performance. You can't fluke a good performance in a race, and you can't fluke a good performance in training because, I mean, with running, you just can't fluke it. You can't run faster than you're physically capable of running. So if you did that session or that race, then of course you can do that session or that race. The flukes are the bad ones. So if I have a bad session, that is a fluke, and I can kind of forget about it and not worry about it too much. Now, as a scientist, coach, teacher, that fluke won't be entirely forgotten. It's a data point, and it will tell me something. It might tell me that I'm just tired and run down and I need to tweak the plan a bit. It might tell me that I really shouldn't eat a curry an hour before going out for a run. There's always a learning from it. So I'm not going to forget about it, but I'm not going to get upset because I know the fluke is, the bad performance is a fluke. And yeah, that's why I'm happy to change the training plan. And the idea of a penciled in session is better. The principles I will hold to are I really work towards having a consistent weekly mileage, so that or like a bigger weekly mileage. My weekly goal will be there, but the weekly goal is more important than any individual session. But then the monthly goal is more important than any individual week. And the yearly kind of total and progress is more important than any individual month. So if I wreck myself trying to train for this campaign and then can't do anything for years, that's a really bad thing because my impact over the next few years will be smaller for my running or for any charity I want to work towards as well. So I've got to be mindful of all of those things.
Yeah, so I'm really hearing that, prioritizing confidence, feeling good or okay about things. And there's this quote about beating yourself up won't make you stronger, it just leaves you bruised. So, not judging yourself, but you're being kind to yourself, and then you're looking for that learning so that you can develop. And there's something also that I find interesting about this idea of consistency, because we hear a lot about how important consistency is, and and it can be, but there's a certain type of consistency that seems to work quite well for people, and it's this kind of like holding it loosely, holding it gently, perhaps, and rather than the fixation being on this sort of golden thread that must not be broken, and then once it is broken, because that's what happens in life, you get derailed, then the whole thing has fallen apart, and then you end up you've fallen off the wagon, and what's the point? And it's hard to build back up again. But instead, the focus is on what you're building each time that you do it, each time that you make another milestone, each time that something is built, then it's like adding another link to the chain. And it reminds me, my nonna, my Italian grandmother, who is about to turn 91. And last year, on her 90th birthday, she demonstrated for us all how she could hold a plank for 90 seconds, which I'm not even nowhere near close to doing. I'm like entry-level plank, and I'm trying and practicing myself. But she got there, yes, through consistency over decades, but not through each practice or each session being this really rigid thing. And she's very happy to let herself off the hook, completely judgment free. If she doesn't feel like it, if it doesn't feel right, or if she gets a better offer, to be honest, to go and do something else. And I think part of it is this not having that judgment, not having that heaviness, not having that weight around this thing that you're trying to keep really consistent and pure. And actually, by letting go of some of that, it actually helps you to have that consistency more in the long term. That I see you nodding. Is that, would you say that makes sense for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was just saying to people recently, like, the key thing is that you're going to not get injured, and you're going to be able to carry on in the long term, because, one event is important and it feels like the most important thing at the time when you're training for it, but actually there's always another event. There's always something else to work towards.
Okay, cool. So it's something you've been doing for a long time. So you have built up this consistency, not just in this training block you're doing now, but over the course of running for quite a few years now. So how did you take on your first running adventure? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think the first running adventure is the interesting one, because like this one's a big step up, but it kind of leads on from stuff I've done before. The first one is like always, how do you end up doing something really big and silly for the first time? So the first big one I did was Everesting. So if you haven't heard of Everesting, it means going up the same hill again and again and again until you reach the cumulative height of Everest, so 8,484 meters. Now, I had no business taking this on when I took it on, because at that point, my longest ever run was one half marathon I've done once, which was a flat one from the Bristol to Bath, Bath to Tunnels, and it's as flat as a pancake. But I did it anyway. So we were living in Thailand at the time, and it was lockdown, so our lockdown experience was a bit different to other people being in another country. But essentially, we had a bit more time, and I came across this idea of Everesting, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And the reason why was because I saw nobody had ever done an Everesting by foot in Thailand before, so I had a chance of being the first. And even more excitingly is they have this lovely website which pops up with the name of the first person to do it in any country. I kind of wanted that, but I had no business doing it, so it kind of percolated in the back of my mind for a few weeks. And then sadly, my granddad passed away from COVID. He was in England, but I couldn't get back for the funeral or anything. So I went out for a run to process that. I snuck into the jungle behind the house because I couldn't really go anywhere else. I just ran up and down the same hill repeatedly. And it was kind of like a mini Everesting. I didn't get anywhere near that height, but it gave me the idea I could do something. And it felt kind of a fitting tribute to Mike, because he was a really big running and marathon fan. He used to always watch all the marathons. So it seemed appropriate. So it gave me the thought that I couldn't stop thinking about it. That gave me the idea that, maybe I could do it a little bit. And then because the island we were living on, Phuket, was very touristy, and when COVID, there was no tourism. So there were a lot of people without any income, and we were supporting a group that were handing out aid bags. And by running Everesting, I could raise some funds. It kind of gave a good, bigger purpose to do it. And so this idea I couldn't stop thinking about, and a kind of a reason to do it, led to it. It actually happened, and on reflection, I still can't quite believe I did it, but I did. It was, bearing in mind my biggest run before that had been a half marathon. This was my first ever marathon length distance, which took a bit over 19 hours with a support team of around 15 to 20 people helping me out on the day. And that was how it all started.
So I think some of it has already come up a bit already, but in what you've said, but can you tell us a bit more about what was it that enabled you to take this on, and what also has helped you, what's also helped you in more recent adventures as well?
Yeah, I think these kind of like universal truths for me, at least in everything I've done, is that there was something that I heard about that I just couldn't stop thinking about. And then once you got one of those ideas, you know that it's one you're going to commit to, even if you know you shouldn't really be doing it. And not waiting until you're ready, because you're never going to be ready. But specific things I do to help make it happen are making it public, kind of what we're doing today. getting people into support, setting a date so that, you know, like there's a concrete date in the calendar marked, it's going to happen then, and then writing a training plan. Everything was a funny one because it was lockdown. I couldn't really go out running, so it made it hard to train for it. And I'd never done anything like this before, so I didn't know how to train for it. But I had a plan, and I kind of just kept showing up and doing it, and it made me feel confident. It did lead to, you know, a lot of just standing up and stepping down from the couch repeatedly, and that was kind of what got me ready for it.
So one of the things that has come up, that's like a consistent theme, is support, having that support. And you know, this is like the you know, like-minded people that don't say, why would you do that? But they actually they get it. And also people who you can learn from and can get that, you know, share from their experience, and who can give you that practical support and moral support. And so this is something that it seems to be really important to cultivate. Support network if you don't have one. And again, it can make it a bit difficult for people that don't like to announce when they're about to take on some kind of challenge. But actually, if you're coming down, means that then, you know, people can help you, and also you can help other people as well. But also with the announcing, you know, that's something that you've said is really useful for you and motivational, is making a public declaration. And so actually with that in mind, if anybody does have an idea that's maybe bubbling away in the background, that they would like to declare with us as a group today to help you, you know, start yourself off, then you can put that in the chat, or you can tell us at the end afterwards, when we hand it over to you guys, or you can also submit it as a pledge, and I'll put the link in the chat there. And so another thing that you've talked about is making a plan, and I think obviously this is like, there's a practical side to this, but also I think this can help, you know, when people have this big thing that they want to do, and how do you actually get started with that? Well, when you make a plan, that actually turns it into the steps that you can take. Even if you don't know what all the steps are yet, that might, you know, I mean, we've talked already about holding loosely to the plan anyway. So that might evolve and change. But then also that gives you that first step, even if the first step, it might not be the perfect step, it might not seem like it's going to get you to that end point, but it's just to get you started to do anything, you know, even just stepping up onto a sofa, is a starting point, as you were doing. And then this other thing about not waiting until you're ready, that has come up, you know, becoming ready by doing. And this reminds me of what Joanna Macy says about active hope, and that you don't need the belief already to start it. You build that belief by doing. And also, you mentioned earlier on as well at the beginning about, you know, what can I, like, running is the thing that I do. And this is something that also comes up a lot that can really help people when they're asking themselves, what is my contribution? How can I use my passion and strengths? And again, that point about actually genuinely asking yourself that question, rather than being like, oh, what can I do? Like actually asking, what can I do? What are my interests? Because it's these, and understanding, you know, what is your role? How do you fit in, perhaps? And these are the kind of things that can help you to start, but also help you to keep going as well. And we see it in things like the Japanese concept of ikigai, about living a life of purpose and meaning and joy. And we also see that this is backed up in research. Like Angela Duckworth has done a lot of research about grit. And it's, you know, grit isn't just, it's not about like forcing yourself with clenched teeth. It's about, you know, really understanding your passion and strengths and linking that into what you're doing. And that's what's going to help you to start and to keep going and to get somewhere, even when there's obstacles. So I think some of what we've talked about already has brought up, has sort of alluded to some of the barriers that we can face, and then also what helps you to overcome them when we get started on things. But another thing that comes up, which also you've mentioned in your own life, in our life, stress, overwhelm in daily life. This is something that can stop people from taking on these things. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, think I pretty much permanently feel like there's too much going on in life and I can't do it all. But you know, something somebody said to me recently, in fact earlier today, it was if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And I think there's definitely some legs within that one. I know that when I take on a big challenge, it gives me a sense of purpose and it gives me a sense of motivation, and I become more productive. And while I'm doing that, I become, you know, a better person in my job and at home, because I'm really trying hard to do everything to fit it in. 'Cause I'm kind of being proactive. I need to do all this, I need to do that. So I'll think about it, and I won't spend too long watching Netflix, and I will do the things I need to do. So I think that taking on these big challenges have been really beneficial and good for me just as a person to grow. It's been good for my mental health. It's been good for my confidence, and that sense of purpose is brilliant. And just kind of those barriers that we see, like, you know, you feel like you're not going to be physically ready. Well, you're going to get physically ready by taking on these big things, and you'll get ready for it. You never will be perfectly ready for them. I don't think I've ever started a race feeling like I'm all set for it. And you know, like choosing when to have children in life, there is never a perfect time. And the worry is if you don't do it, then you're never going to do it. So it's just going for it whenever you get the chance. That's that's my take on that.
And I think, you know, there's anecdotal evidence from people who also say that it's doing these things actually can make you feel better and more motivated, more energized, better equipped to cope with that everyday stress. I mean, obviously it's within a limit. I mean, you've mentioned already about the time when actually there was so much going on and so much exhaustion that then you're not going to go out and have a good run. And so I think we'll come back to that later as well about you know, knowing those sorts of boundaries and those when to slow down. But also there's research that shows that when we're using our signature strengths and we're doing things that are in line with our values, both of which, you know, if you've chosen the right challenge, you're more hopefully going to likely to find those opportunities to use your strengths and your values in your change making and adventuring. And that actually helps to reduce stress and makes us more resilient to stress. This is what the research seems to show. And these things energize us, satisfy us, fulfill us, improve confidence. But also when you're going out and having these experiences, you're meeting people, you're doing different things that are wrapped up in it. And you never know what opportunities, possibilities, unexpected resources might come your way that actually might help alleviate some of those seemingly separate challenges and things in everyday life. And then also from a physiological perspective, oxytocin is known as the love hormone or the cuddle chemical. It has its darker side. It's more complicated than that. But we do know that it's very active in the heart, and it's also made in the heart as well as in the brain. And one of the things that it does, or some of the things it does in the heart, in the body, is that it expands heart tissue, it reduces heart rate, it lowers blood pressure, dilates the blood vessels, it's anti-inflammatory, but it also protects the heart and seems to have a role even in repairing the heart. And so it's actually potentially protecting us from some of the possible physical harm of experiencing stress. And if we think that oxytocin is likely to be released in times of connection and awe, so these experiences that you might have during change making and adventuring, like when you feel at one with nature or part of a movement or part of something bigger than yourself or part of a team or part of the universe, this is when you're most likely to be releasing oxytocin. But also, I found out recently that oxytocin is also a stress hormone. So it's actually released when we experience stress. And there is going to be inherent stress and challenge as part of the change making adventuring experiences, like they are challenging. But that challenge and with the other parts that come with it actually could be potentially strengthening your cardiovascular system against the stress that comes from any part of your life. So on that note, talking about stresses and challenges in adventuring, why don't you tell us the story of when everything went wrong? I know you've got some.
Yeah, well, there's one that kind of leaps out, which is the one where everything really did go wrong. This is the training plan or training cycle of hell. But anyway, this is the story of training for the Wye Ultra, which is a really awesome ultra marathon on a really small, beautiful island in Thailand. I signed up for this race, but then it was postponed actually, I think, over about 2 years because of COVID. So by the time it came, it was going to be in the summer holidays, like right at the end of our time in Thailand, because we were moving back to England. So it was like a last hurrah. But I'd done a bunch of ultras by then, and ultra distances and a couple of ultra races. So I really wanted to go and see how hard I could run. I wanted to race an ultra rather than just try and complete it. So I wrote my training plan, really excited, really confident, set off, and a week later I got COVID. Was pretty ill. Took me a couple of weeks before I started running at all. Eased back into it. And then I started feeling great. Ran really hard. Got ITB band, injury from overuse because I went from 0 to hero too quickly. Rewrote my training plan, rehabbed the injury, started feeling better, and then I had an amazing run. Like, you don't get these runs very often in life, but I ran 10K along the seafront with a sunrise. It was phenomenal. It was one of the most beautiful sunrises ever, and I felt great. So I wanted to document that by trying to take a selfie. Whilst taking the selfie, I slipped on the slipway, smashed my head on the concrete, and narrowly avoided sliding unconscious into the water. Managed to get myself out and back, and ended up in a slightly seedy and scary Thai clinic, getting 11 stitches in the back of my head. Eased myself back into my training plan, rewrote it, didn't overdo it, got myself back going. And then I fell off my motorbike and banged up and scraped out my right-hand side. Take stock, rewrite the training plan. Problem was then there was only about 2 or 3 weeks before the race. So, you know, with all these setbacks, training hadn't happened. It was time to just kind of like reassess my goals. So I decided it was my last chance to run an ultramarathon in Thailand. I was going to enjoy it. And what I thought I could do then was just enjoy the experience. It was going to be brilliant. It started at 10:30 at night, so I could go and run through the jungle, experience that, run into the sunrise, and have this great experience there. So set off doing that with kind of lower expectations and not trying to be competitive. Despite trying to not be competitive, I could not sleep before the start of that. I remember lying there just completely wired and nervous and excited. So that happened. Then, yeah, set off nice and calm. And I had this brilliant moment where in the middle, it must have been about 1 in the morning, in the middle of the jungle, I realized there was just nobody near me, nothing, no people, no humans anywhere near me, nobody around. Turned off my head torch and just kind of stood there for a few minutes, appreciating where running had taken me. I mean, I didn't know where it was, but it was beautiful and it sounded amazing. And so a good 2 or 3 minutes just realizing how dark it was and how many sounds there are in the jungle at 1 in the morning. Turned my head torch back on and there was a nice big green snake there, which was pretty cool. Once I realized it was a non-venomous one, of course, there was a little bit of heart rate before that. So that was really cool. You know, I was doing what I said I was doing. I was just enjoying it. Then my head torch started fading. So switched the spare one. That one started fading. So I thought I'd pop in my spare batteries. Turns out somebody, well, me, had packed the wrong batteries. So I had AAA, not AA batteries, or whichever way around it was. So I was there with a very, very weak and fading head torch. We won't dwell on that because, you know, that mistakes happen. We learn from them. But the long side of that was I got very, very, very lost. I ended up going 5 kilometers in the wrong direction by the time I was rescued by a very friendly official who eventually got me back on course. And I really, really, really thought I'd just get a lift with him back to the hotel and drop out because I was so frustrated. I'd gone the long way. My battery was dying. It was all going wrong. And I had to really stop and remind myself that I was there to enjoy that experience. And I was going to run through the night and have sunrise on a tropical island in Thailand. And it was going to be amazing. And I wasn't racing. So eventually I kind of taught myself back into carrying on. And I just had a great run. I just really enjoyed it. I got right into the zone. And by the time I got to like an aid station a little bit later, I realized I was in 3rd place. Then I was in 2nd place. I ended up finishing that run, having a great time and coming in 2nd place, which, considering I nearly dropped out or didn't start, was incredible. And I won for all my troubles a pair of socks. So it's worth carrying on for the socks.
I do remember so much of that whole experience, and you know, you might not have slept the night before, but I didn't sleep the night that you were running all night, and I won't be this time either. And I think just to mention, you know, we've talked about adapting plans, but you're also talking about adapting the whole goal. And we might come back to that if we've got time. But and the other thing about this, you know, you're not sleeping the night before and those nerves. And I think what's really interesting is that nerves they're not only normal, but they're perhaps even desirable. And sports psychology and performance research shows that you can feel that pre-competition anxiety at the same time as kind of happiness and excitement, and that feeling anxious has even been associated with top performance for athletes. And this is because anxiety is what we call a high activation emotion. So it's actually your brain and your body dialing up that effort, mobilizing your resources and getting ready to face something big that's about to happen. Beyonce says nerves are energy, and she channels that into her performance. And I think it's the difference between paying attention to just really zoning in on the nerves and then maybe being overwhelmed by it, and also or looking at what else is happening in my body, this activation energy. Yes, there's nerves, that's a good sign, and there's also that readiness and that excitement and that activation there as well, and kind of looking at more of a whole picture of what's happening in your body and your brain at that time. And the other thing that research shows is that actually believing that nerves are a good sign for performance and that they're going to predict a good performance also improves performance more for people who experience nerves compared to for those that did not feel that. And so, you know, now that I've told you about this research, then you can all adopt this new belief. You can believe that feeling nervous helps your performance, know that the research supports it. And when you feel those nerves, you know, celebrate that, yeah, I'm activated and nervous at the same time. And the other thing that I think we should not let you get away with is, I mean, you've learned now what you didn't really, maybe you theoretically knew, but didn't, you know, embody the knowledge at the time of needing to take that time to recover, and ended up with that injury. And I think, you know, sometimes, I guess what you probably keep in mind more now is that, you know, sometimes we need to be willing to slow down, stop, or even go backwards to be able to go further in the long run. And this is also very relevant to change making, and change makers are at high risk of burnout. And one of the people I work with as a coach had this realization that having boundaries, taking care of herself, was not incompatible with her value and her mission of having this positive impact and helping others. In fact, it's actually essential for her to be able to do it to the best of her ability in the long term and make more of a positive impact in the long term. And I think this can be similar as an adventurer. Sometimes it's that slowing down when you need to, resting when you need to, and dedicating yourself to resourcing yourself and strengthening yourself, looking after yourself, even if it feels like you're, you know, putting your goal in jeopardy, but actually it might save you time even and increase your achievements in the long run. And also I remember when you were working on that injury, you did a lot of learning about, like, you know, studying and learning, and kind of you turned it into a learning opportunity and into something that actually then makes you stronger. And in the same way, people often come back from burnout stronger, but it is a risky strategy because it's probably better to recognize how important it is to resource and strengthen yourself before and prevent burnout or injury. But nonetheless, it can work that way as well. And I think also one other thing just to add is that there is a risk, you know, we're talking here about big adventures, big challenges, take on something big. And when there's people who are in particular already, maybe they have like a high achiever mindset, maybe perfectionist, maybe they have these really high expectations of themselves. And sometimes, and that can kind of make it hard for you to know when to prioritize your rest and recovery. And I know that some people with this high achiever mentality see rest and recovery and fun and joy as things that you earn when you reach your goal. But as you know, another one of my coachees realized, as you've realized, you don't always have as much control as you might think you do or might like to have over your goals. And sometimes things take longer. There's several attempts. It doesn't go the way you think. And if you just keep pushing and pushing, until, you know, I'm going to keep pushing till I hit the goal without that resting and resourcing, then you might never get there because you might run out of fuel. So it can be more effective to weave in rest and recovery and see it as something that is strengthening and resourcing you, rather than something that, you know, you get at the end as a reward. And that includes things like fun and opportunities for joy, because these are then what's also helping to put your brain in a state where it's more creative and you're more able to then come up with new ideas, new perspectives, and things that might actually help you with your challenge and your goal as well. So today we've talked about pushing outside, you know, beyond your limits, beyond your comfort zone, challenging yourself. And then we've said, and you also need to stop and slow down and not burn out and not injure yourself. In this example that you've just talked about, it was more of a like morale, motivation, and, you know, convincing yourself that you wanted to go on. But what about in a race where you don't know if you should carry on or if you should stop? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the idea of how do you untangle the feelings of like, it's really hard, I'm feeling bad, am I injured? Is this injury really bad? Should I carry on or should I stop? Which is really difficult to like honestly work out for yourself, particularly on something that lasts longer than you've ever done before, whether that's a marathon, half marathon, or 219 kilometers. And it's even harder if you then have all the expectations, not just of yourself to finish it, but also of, you know, everyone you've told about it, if you've gone down the route of making it public. So how do you untangle the pressures that are internal, the pressures that are external, and then how you are really feeling? And this is one where like experiences really helps. And it also gives it perspective. Like I've done this before. I've pulled out of ultramarathons before. I've finished ultramarathons before. There'll always be another run, which is a key part. And from being like a support crew at aid stations and so on, I know that people just, you know, they want you to be healthy. The most important thing isn't that you finish, it's that you stay healthy and don't do something silly just because of those expectations. So I always remember that people don't want me to get injured in the pursuit of finishing it. They just want me to finish if I can, to be happy. But yeah, it's really hard to be honest with how you feel, because it's gonna hurt doing something like this. There's no two ways around that. How do you work out whether it's a hurt that you carry on through or a hurt that you don't carry on through? And it's just being really honest and just focusing on those feelings, not on what people think, because that doesn't matter. It is a run, and the most important thing is that you can go on and do big other things in the future. So I haven't got a great answer for that one. I don't think there is a right answer to that one. It's just experience, practice, and going on. Obviously, you know, acute pains and things that suddenly hurt. You need to think about that a bit more. And you know, none of this is all running. It's all for fun. It's all for growth. None of it's worth putting yourself in a really, really bad place for. But then you want to put yourself in a challenging place. So it's a difficult balance.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it can feel actually not just a run, it can feel really big. And also, when I'm talking to changemakers as well, sometimes they're thinking, you know, this is about the state of the planet or something. They're thinking about it, something that's really important. And I think, you know, like you said, experience can help, and knowing your own signs, knowing your own indicators. But also, it's might be worth thinking about how stress affects our interoceptive ability. So that's our ability to read the signals from our body, and get that information from our body. And stress also affects our clarity and our ability to make decisions. And so obviously at the time when we're making this decision, should I stop or should I carry on? Whether it's in an adventuring or change-making situation, it's often likely going to be in that high stress situation. So one of the things that might be helpful to do firstly is just to calm yourself and regulate yourself. And you're more likely to be able to do this if it's something that you've practiced doing outside of those stressful times. And then the other thing, this is something that you've alluded to, and also, you know, we talked earlier about things like fixed mindset. These kind of things can also cloud your decision making. Like if you think that the result of this decision is going to put a value on me, it's going to tell me what I'm worth and who I am, that can put a lot of pressure and really muddy the waters when I'm trying to make a decision. And things like perfectionism, people pleasing, all of these sorts of things, and being overly concerned with what other people think, as you were saying as well, Mark, then it's harder for you to work out in the moment what's going on. And then, of course, all of those things, that line of thought and thought patterns are stressful in themselves. So that's going to then affect your interoception and affect your ability to think clearly and make decisions. So again, working on some of those thought patterns, identifying what they are, how they might be affecting you, and how they might be affecting your decision making outside of those stressful times might also be helpful, so that you can really tune in that moment and respond to what's happening in that moment with the best available knowledge that you have, at the time, which might not be complete. So one last question for you, Mark, which is a big one. What happens if you fail?
Thanks. Sure, definitely what I want to be
We're all
thinking
going to
about.
be there.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I'm joking. It's something that you have to think about before you take on something like this. But there are a number of different ways I can rationalize this to myself. So the kind of key one for me is the biggest failure here would be not taking it on and not starting, because the key thing here is that I'm trying to raise some funds and awareness for the River Wye campaign, and by doing it, by having this talk, by posting about it, I'm going to have done that anyway. So by taking on the challenge, I feel like that's been a success. Whatever happens in the run, the aim of the run is to do something really hard and see what happens. So I can justify it to myself that way. I'm not saying I won't be absolutely devastated if I can't finish, because I will be, and it'll take me a while to get through. In general, I approach it with in all these challenges with the idea that I am looking for like the limit of what I'm capable of. I want to know what I can do. So that's why each challenge gets bigger, because you want to see where the limit is, and you're kind of searching for that point where you don't succeed. I really want that to happen. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I want to find the point where I can't do it. John Kelly, a runner, he says that he likes to be successful in kind of 40 to 60% of his challenges. I can't remember if it's 40 or 60 actually, but anyway, it's kind of, not a huge percentage of his challenge. He wants to fail nearly as often as he succeeds. Then he knows that he's picking things right at the limit. I don't think I am quite courageous enough to take on something with that low odds, and I give myself slightly better odds of finishing this. But I do remind myself that I want to find the failure. I want to find a challenge I can't do one day. I don't want it to be this one though. And then every challenge I will then kind of break it down in sub goals. I normally go with an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal. This one's so big, I'm basically filling the whole alphabet, but it means that I will find some level of success. So kind of my A goal here will be to finish on schedule, 32 hours, break the record, and arrive at the finishing event at the drill hall in Chepstow on the 13th of October. See all you wonderful people, have beer, pizza, and a great event with the new record. That's the A goal. The B goal is to finish and break the record. So I get an extra 14 hours to play with, which sounds quite nice and will be really helpful. We'll make getting to work on the Monday morning a bit tricky, but deal with that if it happens. The C goal is the 100 miles. I've never run that before, so I want to break that. D goal is my longest ever run. So my longest run so far is about 84 and a bit miles. So anything over that, and then we're in new territory, and that would be amazing. I've lost track of my letters by now, but the next one down the list, I feel like I'm on an E now, was to really enjoy the experience of the run. And, that I should be able to do. I should be able to find some joy in that. I'm really looking forward to running through the night. To complement all that, just by taking this on, I've had a whole bunch of new experiences. I've been out with citizen scientists. I've run at night on the River Wye path. We've got this event. These are all things that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken it on. So I can be thankful of all of that, and kind of find my success, my happiness, whatever I achieve. I kind of am disassociating this with what other people think, because I know that realistically, if I was watching somebody else do it, I'd be cheering them on. But you hope they finish, but I'm not gonna be judge them if they don't finish. So I know that people are supportive, because that's how I feel when I watch other people take these things on. At least that's how I rationalize it all to myself. So by putting it out there, it increases the pressure, but it also just makes the experience richer. And I've got so many goals there, a whole alphabet of goals. I feel like I've hit some of them at least.
Yeah, so you're acknowledging, when you take on something big, when you put a lot of effort into it, when everyone's watching, there's going to be some level of emotion if it doesn't go to plan. But at the same time, if you make it all about that timestamp and just crossing that line, then it's kind of really a like reductionist way of looking at it. You're kind of reducing this entire big experience with so many different parts of it down to just that moment. And it's about so much more than that. And you've got these different goals, so you've got that flexibility because there are going to be some things that are outside of your control. So that helps you to keep that motivation if it looks like one of the goals might not be likely at some point during the build up to it or during the event itself, and gives you something, definitely some things to celebrate. And I think also something that has come up in conversations that I've had with people is that it's when you've got that final, cross the line kind of goal, which is outside of your control, then it can be helpful to look at what is it that you're building, what is it that you're growing that is still related to your achievements, but that then you get to keep and you get to take it with you and you get to continue growing. So, every step that you're taking, every meter that you're covering, and every bit that's contributing to your fitness, to your experience as a runner, other thing, your support system, all these other things which have been growing. And I think also, you mentioned about it being bigger than you, and this sense of humility of this idea that actually it's not just about me and the bigger picture, that also it's not just about a moment. This can be quite helpful for people to realize that actually this is bigger than just me. I'm a part of it, and sometimes that can be quite reassuring. So that brings us to the end of our big talking bit. And just one more thing to say is that obviously, Mark has said that part of his strategy is that helps him with motivation is declaring it, making it public. But we've gone way beyond just the standard declaring. We've made a big webinar, we've made a big song and dance. We've got the town hall involved in the event on the 13th. We're all going to be there, and it's going to be a really good event. We're going to have stall holders and speeches and craft and activities and things like that. But there's going to be all these people, and there's and online as well, all there to see what happens for Mark out on the trail. So he's put a lot of pressure on himself, and the reason that he's done that, like gone beyond the standard just declaring what he's doing, is to raise awareness and raise funds for the River Wye. So if you haven't already donated, then please, and you're able to, then please do consider doing that. Also, we will be putting up shortly details of the next webinar, which is going to be after he's made his attempt. So we'll be talking about either his success or his not so success, or whatever happens, lessons learned, and
Experience.
the experience, and also again just looking at what can we take from these sorts of experiences that can help us in our everyday life as well. So thank you so much for being here with us and for listening. Now we'd love to hand it over to you, to all the people in the room. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to ask them. But also we want to know, what resonates with you, what do you do differently, what have you learned from your own experiences, and if there's anything that you're hearing that you would take with you. So you can put things in the chat or speak up and share. Oh, we have got a question here.
So I think, Francois, thanks. We were chatting about this the other day about sleeping. I was going to ask whether you did that when you were watching the Cotswold Way the other day, because I knew you did a whole night without sleep. So I'll have a chat with you about that. But I'm not planning any massive sleeps. Kind of 32 hours is not enough that I'm missing. I mean, missing one night of sleep is okay, but I'm going to plan a couple of points where I'm meeting somebody to help support me through a coffee nap, which I haven't actually tried yet. I do need to do this. I've only got a couple of weeks left, which is the idea that caffeine takes 20 minutes to kick in. So have a cup of coffee, nap for 20 minutes, and then when you wake up, you're not groggy. I'm hoping that is all I will need. If it's going to that point where I'm struggling and I need longer, then I'll just give myself a longer nap. So I will make sure that the support crew have kind of something there. I'm interested. I'm really looking forward to giving that a go. I need to plan that in. I was kind of focusing on this and other things, to be honest. But I need to schedule that. I'm running out of time. Yeah, fuel's a good question. And mental tricks. Nice. I'll go with fuel first because that one's kind of easy. When we're doing like a longer run, it's almost all about just like the natural food, and the longer it gets, the more likely it is to be natural food, because gels and powdered fuel isn't going to work. In general, like I think just the more whole, healthy food you can have, the better. But I've got a bunch of staples that I've kind of used regularly for these long ones. So oat pancakes, I love an oat pancake. They go down really well. So they travel reasonably well as well. So oat pancakes, and then I will have some bean burritos with rice. A salty potato salad hits the spot. And yeah, it's just like having those big meals. I have learned that trying to eat too much can backfire when you just end up feeling sick. And so it's little and often, generally. And then when I do have something big, I'll make sure that I walk for a little while after that. I'll still be making movement going forward, but the walking is the big one. In fact, I think Raz, you were there when I learned this lesson, because we had in fact, my previous FKT back in Thailand. I did my normal thing of announcing it, and I ended up with a film crew following. And when I ate my nice bean burritos, I haven't changed my fuel for a long time, because it works mostly. I was having my bean burritos and trying to walk and eat my bean burrito, and that was it. That was fine. But the film crew drove in front of us and started filming us as we were walking down the road, eating. And I felt like I needed to run. So I started running kind of as I was finishing my bean burrito. And yeah, that didn't go so well. I felt really ill for a while after that, because I think going too much there. So yeah, I think you feel sick if you eat lots and then run straight away. So if
was
you're
the heat? Was the
race,
heat?
was it? Sorry, Russ.
I'm saying it was the heat, not the burrito.
Oh, the burrito got me. The heat got you, if I remember rightly. Yeah. So yeah, refueling strategy. I haven't mapped it out actually yet, but I will make sure, basically, because it's quite a long one, so I'll kind of have meals. I'll plan in my breakfast. I'll make sure that I've got a really nice breakfast to look forward to on a Sunday morning, with coffee. I often really, really get excited about coffee when I'm running. There are some weird things that you really, really want. I see Jonathan's comment there of what I'm going to forget and leave behind, because I had a bit of a low patch. I had lots of low patches, but my first low patch in the South Wales Traverse, I convinced myself that I was going to have a Coca-Cola and I was going to feel much better. And I was so excited about this Coca-Cola. I was talking about it for about 2 hours. And then when we got there and opened up the cool box, it turned out that the Coca-Cola was one of the things I had left in my fridge at home. So I'm going to be, a bit more stricter on my planning, and I'm going to make sure that I've got the things I know I want, because I know that I know the meals I like. They seem to work quite well, and then things that I get really excited and look forward to are Coca-Cola, watermelon, and those sweet fruits, and coffee. So I think I'll get some really nice coffees and pastries and breakfast options to see me through the night, because that part of the night when it's just been dark for a really long time and it's not yet dawn is kind of the hardest part. And I think this time will be even harder, because by that point I've been going for 22 hours and I'll still have another good 10 hours to go. All right, just having a quick scan through. So I've addressed what I'm going to forget. A bit about fear. So I've got mental strategies. Some people go with a mantra. And mine, I guess I go with the mantra of constant forward motion, or one step in front of the other, and you'll just get there. So the idea of constant forward motion, if I'm moving forwards, I'll get there eventually, whatever time it takes. And that one works really well for me. But I think I seem to get into when it's really tough, I get into a spot where I don't really think about it and I don't question it. I just know I'm going to be moving forwards. And at that point, I'm always quite glad that I've done as much thinking as I can beforehand. So I'm not having to deal with that. I know that when I get to the aid station, I'm going to eat wherever I've planned. I have a tendency with people who are helping me out. I'll give them a list of questions, and so that they're going to ask me the things that I know I need to be asked at that point. And we'll get there. So that's that. And there we go. So have I done a recce of the whole route? No, I'm working on it, but I'm going to have recce'd probably about 40% of it, if that. It's quite well signposted and it's quite an obvious path, so it's not the navigational challenge that the South Wales Traverse will be. I'm mainly going to be relying on the Ordnance Survey Map app, which is really, really good at telling you if you're on a national path, because it's a big path. It's pretty well signposted in most cases. And I mentioned earlier, Jane from our club has done the whole route before. She has the women's record. She's given me a bunch of pointers on the points where the signage is the worst. So I'll pay attention to that. So I'll have the map electronically with a power bank to charge my phone when it starts to die. I've got a paper book that has like little zoom in maps of all the different sections. And yes, Francois, I will have a tracker. So I'm kind of hoping that somebody like Jane will call me up and go, "You've gone the wrong way," before I go too far the wrong way. The vert is less than South Wales Traverse. It's still half an Everest, but it is it's not as bad as South Wales Traverse. The distance is significantly further, and not far off twice as far as the South Wales Traverse, but it's got less vert. So I think the vert was the bit that did me in on South Wales Traverse. So I'm kind of clinging on to that. Have to work the week after that. How will I manage that? I always have done in the past, I guess. I seem to always manage to time these to have to go back to work. The worst one was when I got invited to go and run the Backyard Ultra for England, and it was in Snowdonia, and that was all night on the Saturday night, and then I had to have a few hours sleep. I drove back directly to work, stopping at a hotel because I had to get in for like 5 in the morning on Monday and launch a new computer system. That was one of the hardest days of work I've done. This time, luckily, it's not so bad. I will get there. Dogs and cows on the route. Yes. I feel like I've got a bad rep with you and dogs, John. But my main issue with dogs is the wild ones we used to get in Thailand that were just brutal. I don't have a problem with dogs in England unless they give me a surprise when I'm still like, I'll jump. But to be honest, I'll jump every time I see a rope or a stick on the floor because I'm so used to running from snakes, or at least seeing snakes and being cautious. It's been quite a few years, but I still see snakes everywhere. I swear I saw one on the road the other day. Unlike Raz, who was just oblivious, and I remember him running straight over the top of a very poisonous snake once. Luckily, you're still here. Cows, though, are one of my biggest fears on the route. I'm cautious of cows. I've been chased a couple of times, and they're scary. They're really big. I think I'd be fine in daytime, but at night, yeah, I find them a bit intimidating. I remember running from a field. In fact, this is embarrassing now, having a look at who's here, because I remember leaving Francois once in a field and running over the fence before the cows could get me and leaving him behind. I'm pretty sure I did the same with you, Dickie, as well. So, yeah, I'm a bit scared of that. Cows sleep at night. I thought of that as well. They do sometimes. They sleep standing up though, which is still terrifying. I remember on the final lap of the Barkley Marathon, so I must have been 115 kilometers into the run, getting near the end, and I went into a field that had been empty all day because I've been through it twice before. I just jumped over the fence, came into this field, and saw cows everywhere, and full on panics because I had been chased earlier that day. And despite being, I think, probably 17 hours into my run at that point, I did a sprint across the field and a barrel roll underneath some electric wiring. That time they were all asleep, but I'm a bit terrified that they'll block the route, and like because the group that I've got caught by the other week, they were just really interested in the head torch. And the problem is you turn the head torch off, you can't see where you're going. So I couldn't like sneak around them. And as soon as I took the head torch on, they ran over to me. Yeah, if that happens, I'll deal with it. I'll get a big stick and it'll happen. Yeah, pokey stick. Yep, definitely. Pokey stick seems to be the #1 bit of advice. Thanks, Francois. Yeah, so thank you for all those questions. You have kind of like raised a few of my deepest fears there. Yeah, brilliant. But that's kind of the point of the excitement about it as well. But yeah, one thing that we haven't had is anybody who has any of their own really big goals that they've got coming up or anything they're inspired to do. I know a couple of people here have got some things coming up, which we will see. Thanks, Polly. I know Katie, you've got a big run on this weekend, so good luck with that. And Joff, your PB chasing again, so good luck with that. And yeah, it was brilliant. So thank you. And I look forward to sharing with people how it goes and hearing about whatever you are up to next. And I appreciate all of the support from everybody here. I know you've all got my support for anything that you take on in the future. And we hope you feel like signing up, pledging, and taking the leap into something and doing something out of your ordinary. Thanks, Sean. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, hopefully see you at the finish. Thanks, Raz. Brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we'll wrap it up there and leave you to your evenings. And we will touch base with you in the next one.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
That was very
Christina.
fun. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jesse.
guys.
Thank you, Karina. Cheers, Raz. See you, Joe. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, big cycling is a good idea, Jenny. Yeah, it doesn't have to be running, does it? Hi, Simon and Larry. Yeah, definitely find something big, Kath. That sounds like a good idea. Thanks, Karina. Thanks, Nikki. Cheers, Dickie. Lovely stuff.